In the previous lesson about Grasshopper in Rhino, we explore how to create many different types of objects, and we can create rigid and hard poly models. We can create also like softer and curvy surfaces and solids using the sub-D. So when we use the mesh, usually we have more hard poly modeling. Instead, with the sub-D, we have more soft poly modeling. And we don't have too many tools in Grasshopper to do this type of modeling, especially if you're using parameters instead of the standard way to model. But anyway, we can use it to do more variations on what we create. So in the previous lesson, we also created a parametric opening here for the window. We choose to center that on the face. So parametric modeling, it's a little bit more complex and longer to define, but once you have it, it's really quick to edit and change the final result. That's the main advantage in parametric modeling. But sometimes you cannot get like that sculpting or 3D modeling feeling that you would get with other applications. And well, you need to choose which one is best for you. So anyway, we generated here, we baked and generated sub-Ds, meshes, and again, with the sub-D, we have a lot of curve softness or curviness of the solid of the surface. So let's assume we don't want that too soft or too smooth. So how we can do that? Well, we can do it by beveling or using fillets edges, or chamfering, filleting. That helps to, you can see here, this is a baked mesh from the sub-D. And also, if you want to print, you need to convert at some point to mesh. So even if you're using sub-D to make everything nice and smooth, well, then you need to convert it again and make that into faces, which then can be printed. So even though we're using NURBS in Rhino, or we're using sub-D that smooth everything out, we're using organic, nice, rounded elements, well, at some point we need to export them either for rendering or for printing in 3D. And in that case, well, we need to make the switch and make it actual faces, or basically turn it into a mesh. Also, we created some structures there, which could be more linear and precise or more organic. So again, it's kind of depending on what you need to achieve. If you're looking for something that looks like a tissue, organic, or a plant, or a rock, or a cave, I don't know, and then you may want to use the sub-D or subdivisions. And we don't have many tools in Grasshopper. So the only one of the few we have is this one here. Is called subdiffuse, which is kind of a boolean. So if I with two sub-D, so let me create another sub-D. And also, we don't have many tools for meshes. Again, you can find those in other applications. We have a lot of Voronois or similar, which are pretty cool, but again, they will create some random shape. And then we have, of course, add-ons, plugins like Pufferfish does have some more tools using meshes. But again, in general, just to give you some suggestions, if you want to go for hard and soft poly modeling and sculpting, digital sculpting, you may want to go like in Blender, which is free and open source. Or you have 3D Studio Max, Cinema 4D. They all work with polygonal modeling, which is quite different from parametric modeling we do in Rhino and Grasshopper. But anyway, we have some tools. So this one here, again, is subdiffuse. So we need to create a mesh and then smooth it out into a sub-D. Or we can create a standard surface and then again apply the sub-D conversion. But let's do a mesh. So just to show you what we can do here with the mesh, it's again really basic, but also sometimes I'm gonna activate the preview there, so to show only the preview, sometimes not. So now I just deactivated the preview visualization. So if I do this, which is set the points for mesh, you can see that creates the mesh. So this is called construct mesh node, and is basically creating a face. And then from there we can proceed into something else. So let's say that we want to do something simple, which is offsetting the mesh, and let's set a number here for the offset. And with this, which comes from pufferfish, we can also create a solid. So it's not just offsetting, but it's also like filling the gaps and creating a solid. When we do offset in Grasshopper, usually leaves a gap, but I'm going to show you more examples later. And then we convert this into a sub-D. Now you can see what happens when I turn an object into a sub-D. So if it's a box, it's gonna become like a ball. So if it doesn't have too many subdivisions inside, sub-D will make everything radically smooth and curvy. So one way again to stop that is to add subdivisions. So I created here created a mesh box, and let me just set a new box here so you can see it's a little bit bigger and we can see it. And you can see it has many more divisions, and it has more faces, and I can control that. So let me copy and paste. So if you want to like restrain a little bit, if you want to like manage the smoothness using a sub-D, well, all you can do is just work with the, let me also plug this into the Z. So you can work on the subdivisions and the number of faces or segments you have inside the object. So you can see that if I smooth this with the sub-D again, you can see that we go from a really, really smooth and curvy object when we have few segments, and it's gonna be less curvy and more boxy if I increase the segments inside. So that's a way, again, it works in general with hard and soft poly modeling, also in other software. And let me here create a vector for a movement. So I want to move this a little bit up, and now let's fuse these two together. So I have a two sub-D. One is the walls that we created in the previous video, and then we have this box, and you can see they're like merging together. And every time you need to print something, well, you need to convert it into mesh, yes, but also it doesn't have, it's not supposed to have like gaps or holes or things like that. So make sure it's a closed sub-D. You can select it and check it in Rhino once you bake it. You can see if it's a closed mesh, it's good for art poly modeling. If it's a closed sub, it's good for soft poly modeling and printing in 3D. And if you render in Rhino, you can check if also the render works. Now I want to set a curve for this, which is a polyline we created in the previous video, and it is just to have a closed shape. So if I select and set one curve, now I want to extrude this, and again this goes more in the hard poly modeling because I am extruding with the linear extrusion, or in general, you can see also you can extrude the mesh, and well, let's do a tapered surface, which we didn't do yet. So I'm going to extrude it and also have a taper, which is kind of a transformation. So I'm going to set the vector for the extrusion up like this, and you can see it's going straight up without any tapering. And if we want to add a taper, we need to assign here a different angle. So let's set a number here. Let's put like 5, and you can see it's tapering. Let's change this into -5, so it's going to go opposite, and there you go. So it's like having a smaller profile on the top. And you can see also we have corner type. So when you have corner type like this, you can directly add here